So here's the controversial statement. You can use this as a tagline. I think the Magento world has never run open source themselves. A lot of people think they did, but there was always some commercial company behind it with a lot of money, a lot of backing, that worked to propel the product forward. Adobe is very, very clear that Magento, for them, in total, is code.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of Mage Talk, and with me today is Matthias Schreiber, and he is currently the director of the Magento Association. And I want to ask Matthias anything there is to know about the Magento Association, and what the MA is up to these days, and why it is so important for the Magento community. Welcome, Matthias.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Very nice. As some listeners may know, I am a board member since I think already 2 years. So in theory, my term is already up, but we're working on actually renewing seats, and we actually have an election coming up where we're opening up for new people to join, so that's exciting. But I'd like to go back to the beginning and see if we can get to know you a little bit, Matthias, because you arrived out of nowhere at Meet Magento Poland 2021, new for many people to the Magento community, but you came from a whole different community. How?
True.
So what can you tell me about what you did before Magento, and then how did you end up in Poland?
So we had been in touch with Vinay through a common friend. I'm from the Typo 3 community, which is an also PHP based open source content management system, pretty big in Europe. And for the last 6 years before that, I was the executive director of the company that the Typo 3 project founded. And before that, I donated 2 years of my time to the community as a whole. So I went to my partners in the development agency that we had. We used to do Typo 3 projects. And I went to my partners and said, hey, look, we're making our living with Typo 3, but there's a couple things in jeopardy. Things need fixing, and I want to do this full time, and you just continue paying my salary. And luckily, everybody agreed, so we were able to pull this off. Give me 1 second, because there's
It's through community spirit. Yeah,
to a degree. That was boy. Give me a second. Damn mic stands. Okay, here we go. That's how all that came about. So back in the day, we were struggling with funding, and there were a couple development related issues that weren't going in the direction that everyone in the community wanted it to go, and then people wanted to have like an evergreen version of Typo 3, so they didn't want to upgrade anymore, much like the
LTS, long-time support. Yeah.
Yep. And we then basically said, okay, if there's demand in the market, then there's also money in the market. So we will simply provide all the bug fixes as a paid service to those who want to buy that service. And I think I sparked the same idea for, I think it was Magento 1. When Magento 1 to Magento 2 migration happened, I was in Jena at an e-commerce conference, and then talked to people who asked, like, hey, how did you do it? What's the point? Then pricing, all those kind of things. So that's how we got Typo 3 back on track. And after a while, we decided that we as a community should have, we have an association in the background that holds the trademarks and all those things. But we decided that we need some sort of commercial entity that is still owned by the Typo 3 Association, and hence owned by the community to a degree.
That's a really cool model where the community basically owns the product because the association serves the community.
True.
If I'm incorrect,
no,
then please
simple.
correct me. But so community pays the association. So the association is in service of the community, and the commercial entity basically provides funding back to the ecosystem and the nonprofit, right?
Well, we didn't pay back to the association directly, but we spent between 200 to, the peak times we donated like €1 million back to community projects. So we would pay developers to work on the core. We would pay for certain projects that we wanted to do, like, so not maintenance things or pull request management, but hey, let's build this piece of functionality. Who can do it? And we created code sprints. We call them code sprints in the Magento world. They're called hackathons, but the principle is the same. And what we did differently was that we used the funds that we were able to generate to basically get all the developers to that hackathon, pay the hotel bills for them, pay travel and accommodation pretty much, because they already donated their time. So that was one of the core tasks of the company behind it. And then with the merge of the acquisition of Magento through Adobe and a lot of things being unclear, I think that's that's the best term to describe it. Vinay and a couple other people came up with that open letter towards Adobe, and invited me to come to Poland to provide an alternative perspective. I think that's like the best term to describe it. And I went to Poland. I was thrown on stage in the panel, pretty much unprepared, and just started to provide some insights of how we do things. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's better or worse. It's just different. And then I remember that we were in a lot of conversations afterwards, like how can we make the association more active? Because before that, it was run pretty much by a company that took care of all the operational tasks. So make sure that there's a nice presentation for every board meeting, and find sponsors for fundraising events, all those kind of things. Do accounting. Somebody needs to do accounting. It was
so we're talking about Smith Bucklin, which is a company that provides company services, like
exactly.
They form a company inside your company and do all of the administrative and all the tasks that need to be done just to run the company.
Yeah, association as a service. So it's like an SaaS company, and I think the budget for that management company was somewhere in the range of $300,000 to $400,000 per year. And at the same time, they were basically waiting for input to take over like bigger tasks for Magento, or more like strategic, visionary, high level things. And it felt like the board was waiting for Smith Bucklin to come up with the strategy and the high level stuff. So it seemed like there was some sort of a deadlock. And in Poland, I came to love the Magento community because it wasn't that different from the Typo 3 world. Only
what
that
is different?
I think one of the biggest differences is that it's truly global, while the Typo 3 the type of 3 ecosystem considers themselves global, but it's super Eurocentric, and even worse than that, it's super German-centric. So that was a constant fight I was fighting. I didn't want to accept like development sessions on the developer conference, which were in German, because I was like, hey,
Yeah.
this makes no sense. This is exactly what we're trying to work against. But in the end, this is one of the downsides, by the way, to be community driven and community owned, because you just get outvoted, even though it's bad for the project. So the grass is not always green on the other side. But the true global nature of Magento is something that I wanted to get through in the Magento world and in the Typo 3 world, and we never were able to make that happen because it was always super Germany focused. And if we were like, hey, if we want to go to the US, we need to do this and this and that. And when you are in the US, then Asia will follow, and then eventually Africa will follow, because that's how the tech world works. And if you live in not invented here city, which is pretty much what Typo 3 is, it's always like, yeah, we know that everybody does it that way, but we can do better. But somehow we don't.
Yeah, it's weird how these tech platforms that do not start with English as their native language, that they always have a hard time making the switch. And you can wonder why Typo 3 never became global, because it's very highly adopted in Europe, and a lot of governments and big institutions are using it, and it's used a lot in the Netherlands as well. I think it's definitely not as popular as WordPress, but
True.
yeah, you can definitely see that a language barrier and having a fans community by this language barrier really keeps adoption back globally. And you can see from our good friends and competitors at Shopware that the struggle to switch a community that is German first to switch them to English is just really hard. Yeah.
And
Cool.
I
So
mean, when I was in Meet Magento in Amsterdam last November, I actually met a couple of the Typo 3 people, and they're basically saying like, hey, we're no longer doing it because it's declining. And if there's a public tender out there in the Netherlands, then there's like one person bidding on it, and I think that's a bad sign. So that's what I like a lot better about the Magento world. And I love to get in touch with different cultures. I love American culture. I love Indian culture. I love Singaporean culture. I love Arabic or Arab culture. I just love being global, because I think if you want to like change something in the world, you have to see the world first and understand it.
yeah, on a personal level, it's so great to travel. Like, without what I'm doing right now, I would never have been able to go to an event in India and experience the culture there, and like really be invited in someone's home. Vijay invited me, showed us around, and we went to temples and everything, and it was really so much different from just traveling somewhere with a holiday as a purpose.
True.
Yeah, so really meeting the people and the enthusiasm and the passion for the Magento community. It's crazy how on the other side of the globe you can have this strong of a connection because of technology and community. It's amazing. So you were invited to Poland to, I think you were kind of Switzerland on stage, and it was very nice to have your perspective, because it was supposed to be a bit of a battle setup where Slava was representing the Magento Association, and Mia and Vinay were on stage as well, representing the MageOS initiative, where we were really trying to shake things up and get a momentum and attention to the platform Magento that was just getting out of sight from, we felt, especially Adobe, who didn't really have a plan post-acquisition, what to do with this community aspect and how that would fit into their bigger plans to create Adobe Commerce and address the high-end enterprise market. And we felt they saw the necessity to maintain Magento because they have a dependency on it and it's a good product and there's a lot of equity in the brand and everything. But besides that, it didn't feel like they actually were working on a roadmap or looking 2 or 3 years ahead of what would happen with the platform, apart from maintaining it and keeping it secure. So it was nice to have you on stage there, and I think for both of the parties involved, so to say, there was a lot of perspective that you added from what you did in Typo 3 that was really helpful to see how we can shape up things in the Magento community. So I was
therapy.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of was. I'll try to find the recording of the panel and link it in the show notes. So I think a couple of weeks passed after the panel, and then I was in a board meeting where the decision was made to no longer work with Smith Bucklin. And you were called in to see if you would be a good fit to kind of lead the effort and take ownership over everything that Smith Bucklin did before.
True.
How does that? So, how as a single person? I know you now have Jörg, so you're now with 2 people, but you started off all alone. How does that work internally? Like, what are the things that you took over from Smith Bucklin, and what happens on an organization level inside, and what are the things you think that Smith Bucklin did that were maybe not even needed to do? And how's that transition been, except for really painful to get email accounts and access to bank accounts?
That was tough. That was really tough because I mean, there's a lot of things from an operational level that I personally would have done differently. So like all accounting data was in the private Google Drive of a Smith Bucklin employee, even though Magento Association has like a Google Workspace, so we have Drive, we have room for that. So that was new. Trying to figure that out. Also, the bank account was a dedicated bank account for Magento Association, but made in the name of Smith Bucklin. So that was like the first task that took me a lot of time and nerve to get done is opening a bank account in the US as a non-US citizen.
Yeah. That's
insane. It took I think in total it took like 7 months to get that going. And finding a bank first, because you go through all the banks top to bottom until we finally found like an uncomplicated place in Texas who took care to do that. So that was really tough. Also, at the beginning, I started transferring all the website content over from some .NET based thing into a PHP based thing. And I had like, I think 1.5 months to do that. Yeah. There was like 300 or 400 blog posts in total that had to be taken over. Because otherwise we would have been invoiced for another 32,000 euros for the website annually.
Yeah, so, for context, Smith Bucklin offers a whole platform that they own, I think, or that they work with, that would, in theory, have allowed us to keep membership data, invoice, membership fees, contributions, a whole, I think, forum or communication platform was attached to it, and they were just using it as a CMS for content management, and it wasn't the best or cheapest platform to do only that. So I think it was a good choice to cut that cost and go to something that makes us move a bit faster. So yeah, you spend a lot of time copying, pasting content over.
Yeah. So that was a little bit tricky. and then I needed to find all the operational data, like founding documents, because basically I got like a zip file of whatever, like Excel sheets and scanned PDFs which you can search through, and this is all before the big jump in AI, where nowadays you can at least analyze the PDF stuff. But it was a lot of organizational things getting that going, but also getting into daily business from day one. So I had to understand what all the different committees did in the Magento Association. Had to get had to get to know people. People had to get to know me. This is also something that is suddenly that there's a different person. And it's no longer the Smith Bucklin people, and now it's Matthias will fix, more or less.
I think the big difference is Smith Bucklin was never on the foreground. Like, they ran the company, they had no real attachment to the Magento community, so they offered no input. And I think I've met the people working there, and they're kind, and they try to do a good job. And I think for what they're used to do, and they actually did a good job at that, but it wasn't what the MA needed to really have a purpose in a community. And I think a lot of people have been very critical of what the MA's purpose has been and where all of that money has gone in those years. And I think not many people are really aware of the shift that has happened since we parted with Smith Bucklin and how the MA is functioning now. I mean, you have a full-time job working at the MA right now, and with you is Jörg, who's doing some of the social media aspects and is working together with you. How would you define? This is a big one. So how would you define the current purpose of the MA? Like, why do you think it needs to exist, and what are you personally trying to achieve with the association?
So here's the controversial statement. You can use this as a tagline. I think the Magento world has never run open source themselves. A lot of people think they did, but there was always some commercial company behind it with a lot of money, a lot of backing, that worked to propel the product forward. Adobe is very, very clear that Magento, for them, in total, is code. They are interacting with the community because we all were able, so that's not just on me, this is also the effort of people on the board of Magento Association, also of people in the MageOS world. That's what we were able to achieve, is that Adobe has understood the value of working together with the community, and they are taking steps to make that happen in the corporate way, because Adobe is like a huge corporation. So it's not that we can simply call someone, hey, go fix this and push it to production. I need a release tomorrow. There's like, I don't even want to know the checklist to do a software release at any company the size of Adobe. There's like a million things we don't think about. To me, it hit me out of nowhere when I was asking for, hey, is there a product roadmap? And I didn't even think about that. A public product roadmap could interfere with stock prices. I was like, okay, so it's not that you don't want to release it, you can't. And this is things where I mean, I'm also still learning things in the Magento world, or also in the Adobe world. So Adobe is very clear about it that Magento is code, with a couple enthusiasts behind it that want to help make it better, etc. However, everything else is on the community now, and it has never been before. That's never been the case. There was always some big company pushing the effort, and Magento Association in of itself, with like the two people, we cannot replace Magento Inc.
Hundreds of developers.
And not necessarily developers, but all marketing people and salespeople, and all those kind of things. I mean, even if I had all the budget in the world, I wouldn't be able to attend every single e-commerce conference globally. Which is where Magento should be, if you ask me. And when I was in New York in October last year, Damien Ratzinger asked me an amazing question. Smart guy. Was basically, if you had $50 million now, how would you allocate it? And I was like, well, I would spend like 50% on development. So we have engineers on staff that can help with the pull requests, review the stuff, because pull requests are like the community puts things in, and that's their part of the deal, pretty much. But then there's a lot of things in open source that are no fun, which is like making sure everything adheres to coding guidelines, making sure it works, making sure all the tests work out. And that's, nobody loves that part of open source. It's the expression that people love, the freedom to express themselves in code, and to a degree become famous for it, However, there's also this annoying standard stuff you need to do, like making sure tests go green, making sure it all works with compliance, writing the notes for the release, all those kind of things. And this is stuff that we as a community need to do. And luckily, I'm really happy about that. Is that Adobe is on board for those kind of things. So we're not in talking to Perul, which is in charge of
engineering. Yeah.
Engineering and
Parul Sena, yeah.
Right. And what we're doing is that when she creates the blog post for the latest community picked pull requests and the merges in the release, she lists the pull requests that got merged, because that's the perspective she has on it, and I'm grateful that she does it. What Jörg and I want to do is that we want to put the names of the people who actually did the work behind that, to also give some more outreach. So we now get access to the information, what is either, or what has been merged, or what will be merged, and then under NDA, and then Jörg and I can prepare like a more marketing kind of developer appreciation post kind of thing from it. So this
because they write these reports on the Magento forums, which is kind of a overshadowed corner of the internet which is not really the center of communication. But they do post these updates. They link to it on LinkedIn and sometimes on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
What I always find a shame is that it's not really through official channels. So Parul has been posting them in the past. There's now a different person. I have her name here, Priyakshi Chauhan. Probably not pronouncing that exactly. So I apologize for that. But she's been posting the last 2 or 3 updates, I think. But Parul is reposting them. But it's good that they bring it to attention. So the post is usually called Community Prioritization Process Update. And that's come to life since Adobe has been accepting upvotes on GitHub on certain issues and pull requests. So the community can vote on which things we think have a priority, hence the name prioritization process. So we do have control nowadays. We have influence. Yeah. It feels a bit more empowering if we say we have control, because I do think they are so collaborative and they're so happy with the inputs that it does feel like we can control the direction of the platform by creating pull requests, getting attention to it. So what we sometimes do is in one of the Slack communities that I'm part of, someone throws up a message. He says, "I've written this pull request. Can it please get some attention?" And
Which is fair.
then it gets a couple dozen of votes, and that means we have just put that onto the roadmap for the next release. So that's great, and I think so. You mentioned shortly the community has never been in control, of never run Magento Open Source, which I think you said has now changed, which I think this is what you were getting at. But what do you feel is Adobe's investment in this? So what are they still giving to the community? If you say they are no longer taking that control or determining that roadmap, what do you feel are they offering to the community? How are they empowering us?
Well, I think that if you take a look at all the simple thing, development related, PHP compatibility changes, making sure this works with multiple versions of PHP. I don't know how many people in the audience ever had to maintain like things from PHP 7.0 all the way through 8. Where are we? 4?
3 is actual. I think 4 might be coming up. Or
yeah, soonish. So it's super annoying. It's a freaking pain in the ass to keep all those things going and have a polyfill here to, and a workaround there to do all those things and then make sure it works. And Adobe engineers do this. That's a huge part of the actual changes in the code. And I think that it's a good thing to have something as slow moving as Adobe take care of that. With all the compliancy they need to go through, I think Magento is in a really, really stable place as a piece of software, as opposed to take any open source project when the project leader decides, oh yeah, well, we're no longer going to support PHP 8.3. We're now going to, next version will be 8.4, and you have to figure out a way how to upgrade your installation. And this is not necessarily an issue with the core itself, but with all the customization that you built, with all the third-party integrations that you use. That's a huge thing, and I'm pretty happy that Adobe does that. Adobe sponsors events; they still do. So a lot of Meet Magento events wouldn't be that big or that neat if Adobe weren't there to sponsor it. Adobe sponsors Magento Association rather generously. So up to I think it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. They match whatever we raise ourselves. So
yeah,
if the community steps up, Adobe steps up, which I think is super clean move. I really appreciate it. Because before that, it was just like a flat money amount, which also led to sort of laid back attitude in Magento Association. So
which, in all fairness, mostly went to Smith Bucklin.
True. But yet again, there was no real incentive behind it or necessity behind it to raise like money from the community per se. So this is an interesting thing that when Jörg and I talk to people and go like, hey, you should become a member of Magento Association because this is what we do. A lot of people were like, yeah, but I never had to be a member of any association. Magento always just worked. And this is where we need to make people aware, like, yes, that was the past, but now is now, and now has changed. And
so what's important here is Adobe's matching funding.
Correct.
Which basically means no funding is no matching.
Yeah. So
which is made the association much more depending on actual sponsorship and contribution and members. So can you can you tell me how is that money currently spent?
So
Apart from, you don't need to tell me your salary, but a naughty audience.
it's
But where?
it's
So what?
insane. No, it's not.
So imagine I would be a community member listening now, and I am wondering, what am I sponsoring? So besides operational costs to pay two people to run the organization, what do we need the funding for?
There's well, there's a couple things we want to do, and we're in the process of doing. So primarily what we have now with the current funding, that's basically salary of two people plus travel plus operational costs like the website, the accounting company, all those kind of things that need to be taken care of. And now finally, I'm going to print the first piece of roll-ups so that we can advertise on Meet Magento events, advertise MA at Meet Magento events. What we want to do is, given we had all the funding in the world, we want to have developer on staff to help with the pull requests, because I also think that it is our responsibility as a community to make our contributions as easy to manage towards Adobe as we can, just of common courtesy. And I also understand that not everybody has the time to go through like the rigorous testing suite and setting it up, because it's also a little bit pain in the ass, because all tests eventually become unstable over time. So it's annoying to set up. I would like to have marketing people that because I'm not a marketing expert.
Okay, but what do we need marketing for?
Well,
what's the value? So
the value is that the competition pretty much declares Magento dead, which is objectively untrue. But they can say that in public with no backing whatsoever. So we just need buzz around Magento on some official source. Now, given what I said,
credibility. So I would like to
credibility-
I'd like to raise that and say we need credibility. And I think, sorry for interrupting, but I do think this is an important one. I think Adobe has given the association the tools in hand to represent the Magento brand. So we have a contract between the MA and Adobe, which gives the MA official rights to use the Magento brand in promotional material.
Correct.
And I think that's a really important one. That's a unique proposition, and one that the MA should really use to market Magento towards especially merchants, I think.
Yep.
Because you're right, we have a very healthy platform, we have a great community, we have an amazing ecosystem that's unmatched in the e-commerce world. We just have a big corporation, Adobe, who doesn't themselves want to market Magento anymore. They don't really want to put it in a position where it's a product. As you said, they consider it code, and it's something that helps them build on for Adobe Commerce. And they are investing a lot of money in the community aspect, even though there's no real return for them there. But mostly for the collaboration and the input that they can get on the open source collaboration. And I do think they are investing a lot more money than they would necessarily need to enable this community.
Absolutely.
And all the things that you mentioned that are needed to just run the operation of accepting pull requests and then prepping releases that have external input that needs to be validated, tested against security, performance. It needs to fit into all of their other product suites. So there's a lot that goes in it for them. There's a lot of obstacles that they are overcoming just for us to be able to contribute to the product. But they are expressing clearly that it needs to be a two-way street. And they have asked the MA whether we can bridge the gap between Adobe and the community, and whether we can help counseling. No, not counseling. Well, yeah, community council,
Sort of.
technology contribution council. That's what they would really like to see come from the association. And I think this would be the right place and time to say that we as the MA and Adobe are actively looking for people that want to commit time to help process these pull requests and assist Adobe in prioritizing these issues and tickets, and give direction to where we're going with the Magento Open Source platform.
But
so
now I need to interrupt you real quick. But it's even more than that. I mean, I recall a conversation with Adobe's engineering team where we were like, yeah, but you know, how people are looking for a roadmap just to get like an idea what will happen in the future. And the Adobe engineering team looked at us and was like, yeah, when will you send it? And we were like, huh? So the idea is that we as the community can provide basically anything as new functionality in Magento, as long as it doesn't work together with like third-party platforms. So there will be no
dependencies,
proprietary subscription service that we put into core, right? Well, we wouldn't do that with any open source project either. We might provide some APIs that other people can build something like that and then monetize. More power to them, totally fine. But we then figured out, okay, so no third-party integrations, and the other thing was nothing that interferes with business plans from Adobe. Tricky one. So what we basically wanted to do is or not want to do, but are actually doing, is that whatever functionality somebody proposes to build, we go into a conversation with Adobe's engineering team and go like, hey, look, this is what we're trying to do, and then have like a meaningful conversation how we either need to adopt a couple things or what else, you know, the famous, hey, you know what would also be cool pieces of functionality put on top of it. And then we basically get a green light for the functionality that we want to build. So we don't invest all the time as a community building things, and then Adobe says, oh, by the way, it doesn't match our business direction. And then all the work would have been in vain. And this is also something Adobe wouldn't have to do. They could simply say, you know, you submit the pull request, and if we don't like it, we're just going to say no. That's within like what they could do.
Okay, so who should reply? Like, what's the initiative that we're trying to set up here, and how many people do we need for that, and what would that look like?
So the code name for it is the Community Council. The idea of the Community Council is to have a group of 10. I would argue better have 20 people who are willing and happy to engage with the community in terms of the pull requests, review them, mentor contributors a little bit in terms of, hey, you know, this test went red, but if you do this, then it will go green. Because I think it sucks when when some contributor gets the feedback like, hey, your tests don't go green, so bye bye. You know, there should be some encouragement, some help with that, because it's if tests go red, contributors also go like, you know, it's just annoying. When
and then especially if the merge request is done or pull request is automatically closed after a month, then that's kind of depressing. Okay, so we need people for a council, 10 to 20 people, you say.
Yep. And should be knowledgeable about Magento, obviously. You know, so it's not like, oh, I opened like index PHP and now I'm again Magento Pro. So should be people who are knowledgeable about the product, who also from a mindset point of view understand that Adobe just cannot merge everything per se. But the overall idea of the Community Council is also to transfer the knowledge, what is necessary for a release, back to the community council to ultimately give the community council merge permissions. And this is ultimately what we all are striving for, I guess.
Yeah. So would official Adobe people have a seat on that council as well? Would they work directly with them, or would they would the council work with Adobe as a separate entity?
Well, the current setup of the community council does not forbid Adobe employees to become a part of that council. But I think the idea is that we have Adobe engineering on one side, and we have like the community engineers on the other side. And
Yeah.
the council is like the glue between or the gears better, between those two parties. Ideally, I would love those two groups to grow closer together over time.
Okay. So this is clearly one of the responsibilities that the MA has gotten from Adobe. So they have asked us to set up this council, and that council could heavily influence what will happen with the code base. If things go well, they might actually get control over merging pull requests and work very closely with the Adobe team. So I think that's a great position. So I think very good. So that's definitely one of the things that the MA has earned as a purpose, and really makes it worth helping the MA accomplish this, because this is really important for the community.
Yeah. Then events is the next big thing. Bringing people together. So we are allowed to sub-license the trademark Meet Magento to people from the community. So if there's no Magento association, then there's no Meet Magentos, unfortunately. Because Adobe doesn't have the manpower to deal with sub-licensing things. So at least sub-license to multiple people. That's why they basically said, okay, this is part of the Magento brand, Magento Association, you take care. However, if anything goes wrong at such an event, malevolent behavior, yada, 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 basically damages, then Adobe is going to talk to Magento Association first, and then we need to talk to whoever really messed up. But in the end, this is I think the most visible thing right now, because Meet Magento events are A, they're still going, B, old ones are coming back, C, new ones are popping up. So
how does it work? Imagine we already have one in the Netherlands since 2 years. So I know how the process, also as a board member, I know how the process goes. But imagine I would be in Germany or France or God knows, Canada, and I am interested in hosting a Meet Magento event.
Yep.
What are the requirements and what do I do? Who do I speak to?
Well, you can always get in touch with people on the event committee. There's like I think it's committee-events@magentoassociation.org. If you want to just drop an email, then it goes to everybody in the events committee. You can talk to Jörg and me directly, send an email to the info@magentoassociation.org email address. That's all fine. You can take a look at meetmagento.com, which is a website we also brought back. And there's an explanation what it's there for. We're primarily targeting merchants because I think over time, and this is also pre-Adobe acquisition, Meet Magento was originally planned to be a way for merchants to meet Magento for the first time. And over time, it kind of shifted into Magento people meeting each other. You know what I mean? And I think I think we should bring the original focus back to make merchants aware that we're still up to the task in terms of e-commerce, and that it's a good place close to you. Go there, meet people, also meet business people, but also meet the community and just become part of this whole thing simply by using the software. And
Yeah.
there's basically everything you need as a merchant is at a Meet Magento event, pretty much.
So what's there for a merchant listening now? What value is there for them to go to a Meet Magento event?
I think what the Meet Magento events are, I think, slightly different from the typical e-commerce conference thing, because the Magento community is very, very open and honest about things that also didn't go so well, and try to share that so that others don't make the same mistake. It's a very open sourcey mindset, because you're sharing the code so that other people, or you're sharing code, let's say for a bug fix, because you don't want others to trip into that bug. That's the whole idea. You want to give back, and you can either go to some big brand business conference where people will only show you like the upsides of things because it's basically a glorified sales pitch, or you can get like truly honest and fundamental sessions about how people solved a problem, why they didn't approach it in other ways, because there's like an analysis of that, and that's I think very, very very useful to merchants. And you can get in touch with other merchants as well that are also there, and just talk about stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting how this just gradually changed, and it might have just been a sign of merchants caring less about the exact technology. But through the years, like it's been 10 years when I went to the first Meet Magento Netherlands event, and there were more merchants than the year after and the year after. Like it didn't halve every year, but it definitely decreased fast. And you could see that it also affected the agenda once less merchants came to the event. It became more technical focused. Now, of course, there are plenty merchants out there that are really technical and enjoy this kind of content. But the agenda differs very much between the events, how much merchant focused it is, and probably it's kind of it keeps it kind of technical when less merchants come to the event. But there's definitely some examples. I think New York and the UK do a good job at also having business tracks that are less technology focused.
Oh, they all have. So in India had it, Singapore had it. I had a really, really, really interesting conversation at Meet Magento Singapore, where so Singapore was basically showing off like the space shuttle level projects. And I had a conversation with a merchant who was there, who basically said, well, I don't really see myself represented here. And then I was at least able to, hey, you're in the wrong track, over there's like the interesting stuff. But he didn't feel represented, but he was working for Real Tech, which is like whoever has any sort of sound chip or network chip, the chances are really high that it's a Real Tech thing. And he's like the head of e-commerce for Real Tech. So this is huge. And this is why I think the on the one hand you have agencies that try to show off what they can do. So suddenly like every project is this space shuttle go off to Mars kind of thing, because they want to show what they can do. And I think it's tricky to strike the balance to the merchant that sells air conditioning units, because they don't need,
simple.
AI. They don't need AI generated videos that show off how great the AC unit looks. They have like the CAD drawings and they can render it out. However, they need good customer service. They need integration with their ERP system, with the people who actually build the AC units, and it's this broad audience of merchants, and also this broad types of challenges that merchants need to overcome. And it's very often it's the simple stuff. It's page speed, it's good integrations, it's a good look. So that's actually fun to use the platform. And I think,
Marketing automation,
yeah,
integration
sure.
with backend systems, shipping,
Yep.
payments. Yeah, what I think most of these events do really well is that they try and enable merchants. They try to pull them in. They often have big discount fees, if not even free
Free
tickets
admission, yeah.
for merchants. And I think the value of the presentations for me is always at most half of the value of the event, because what's so special about it is connecting with the people and everything that happens in the hallways. I always forget about the agenda and I miss half of the talks I actually wanted to see, because I'm in such a engaging discussion with people that just walk up to you and start talking about random things that are just super interesting. So the community aspect of these events is really strong and valuable. And that's in the end what you learn most from, is from other people's experience and
Yep.
knowledge, and the fact that people are so willing to share within this community is really the strength that we have. And I know with other e-commerce platforms in the communities, it's a lot more challenging. People are not so sharing and way more protective of the knowledge that they built in their company,
Yep.
and the competition is higher. And I think the collaborative effort of Magento agencies and tech providers and individual developers is really special to this community.
Yeah. Nothing to add.
So, what what's the big thing you're currently working on?
The big thing right now is the elections, getting those done.
When can
And
we expect those?
I can give you that information in 2.5 hours after my board officers call, because then I will get the update. No, but we're working on getting them done by the end of the year, definitely. And the other big thing is that we're trying to revive all the committees that we have, because I think that there was a lot of frustration from the times before Adobe fully understood and embraced what community meant. That there's a lot of people are frustrated and just say, look, it's not worth it. So we have an outreach going to get the committees back on track and basically bolster the forces that currently Jörg and I work with. And there's so much we can do. We need people who want to help out SEO optimizing the Meet Magento, not just the meetmagento.com, but also Magento Open Source.com, because we finally have like a website back that promotes Magento as the whole thing that it is. We can use a lot of help in social media, which is funnily mostly retweeting and liking stuff, because Jörg and I don't have the time to go through all the different strands, what's going on social media, and be on every track. Right now what's happening is that people just hit us up with a WhatsApp message and go like, hey, this is something interesting, and we read through it. Oh yeah, that's actually true. And then we retweet it or comment on LinkedIn, stuff like that. This is something where you don't have to be like super social media expert for. But it's also work that can be done. Code contribution, yes. But we talked about the community council at length. Somebody to write marketing content, help out with that. Somebody who helps design things, because I'm horrible at designing stuff. There's like a million things we all as a community can do, and now unfortunately have to do. That's the big change.
So how is the MA structured as an organization? Where do these committees fit in, and how are they set up? How do people get into a committee? What's the structure in the committee? What kind of authority or ownership do they have? How does that work?
So the committees work pretty much autonomously. If the membership committee decides to come up with new membership levels or new perks that you get as a member. That's completely within their capacity. It has to be approved by the board ultimately, of course.
Yep.
And what Jörg and I, as the operational layer in between, do is basically make sure that the meetings take place, make sure we have meeting notes.
So
and
you're
then,
part of all of these meetings?
yeah. And then we kind of gist it down, report to the board what the update is. If there's any loose ends or any decisions that need to be taken by the board, we prepare that. But there's a lot of autonomy in the committees, luckily.
And there is the event committee. They help define the contract or the agreement. They look into requests or applications for new events. Do they work on a promotion of the events?
We help with that as well, true.
Yeah. You have the content committee and the membership committee. Is that correct?
Those are the two that are currently left. That's the election committee.
Yeah.
That's also active right now.
So that's only active when there's an election coming up, because they don't need to do anything when there's no elections.
True. But other than that, we have the social media team that we want to have, or social media committee, the content team, the SEO team, event committee we talked about, marketing committee we talked about, and the code contribution committee, which is basically the community council, correct? So okay. Those are the open talk. And if somebody else wants to come up with stuff, I do know that Mark Schust wants to do Magento-based certifications. Mm-hmm. Then we will have an education committee.
Yeah.
Right? And if somebody wants to, I don't know, go to Mars, we will found the Mars committee. As
long as they put the Magento brand on the shuttle.
Well, the planet is orange. What more do you want?
Okay.
We just need to use the ice caps and make the M turn it into it. But so we have a couple of committees that we want to reignite. But there's also room if somebody has an idea that benefits Magento and the Magento community as a whole. Let's go.
Yeah. So your task is basically to bridge between committees and the board.
Yeah.
You are a public face for the Magento Association, and you're basically representing to some extent Adobe and Magento towards the community. And usually when we try to get you to as many events as possible and have you do an opening talk where you can talk about, what the MA is up to and how we're helping the community. But you could say that your role is mostly being the enabler for the community.
That's the plan, yeah.
And if you are a community member and you feel you have it in you to bring change to the community and you have something to contribute, the MA is the place where they can find Matthias and Jörg, who will enable you to do something for the community. And they have funding, they have control over the Magento brand, so that gives you opportunities to do something in an official way. As you mentioned, we are working on MagentoOpenSource.org, which is .com, MagentoOpenSource.com, commercial.
Easier to find for merchants.
Yeah, exactly, because that's the target audience. We want to talk to merchants and explain to them why Magento is still the #1 open source e-commerce platform. And I think that sums up what the MA currently wants to do for the community and why it's super important for everyone to get involved. And why the Magento Association that you used to know, or you thought you used to know, is really no longer the same thing. I strongly feel there was no purpose for the MA in the first years after they were founded. There was an ideology and there were certainly ideas, but it was mostly a lot of talking and a lot of money spent on Smith Bucklin. That's just the cold truth. And people were skeptic about it, and I think for a good reason. But the change that has happened in EMA over the past 2 years and the urgency or the purpose that the EMA has got for the community really has made it a very relevant organization, I think.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, where can they read more about the Magento Association and how do they get involved? And then especially, I think what we're really looking for is these technical people who want to contribute and join this committee that's working on the technology.
Yes, please.
So you can become part of a council and you can give it a try. You don't need to know upfront what it will be like because you never know. It depends on the group, it depends on the dynamics, and it depends on what you bring to the table. So if you feel like you have something to contribute to this committee, just hit up Matthias on Twitter or by email. Go to magentoassociation.org and just get in contact.
Meet Magento Poland, New York.
Go to any of the events because there will be a Magento Association people at any of the events. We're represented across the globe, and let us help you do something for the community.
Well said.
Matthias, I want to thank you very much for your time. I want to thank you for being brave enough to put yourself in this position and take on this heavy role for the community.
It's fun, though. It's fulfilling.
Yeah, our minds work in a strange way. Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with you over the past 2 years. I'm very happy that the decision was made to get you involved with the MA. And I think if anything, it's been really helpful to get like all of these insights, information out. And I think that's one of the things that we can do a lot better as the MA, be transparent in what's going on, where time is being spent, where money is being spent, but especially what are we up to? Like, what is the purpose that we have as an organization towards the community? And I think we've managed to reveal a lot of that in this 1 hour.
Hopefully, yeah.
So thanks again for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks everyone for listening. And I'll see you soon, Matthias.
All right.
Thank you.
Later. Bye.